Guess you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be, I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit, and now here's your host, Rich Barris.
Welcome to Inside the Numbers, folks, the makeup show. All right, Laura will be there very soon, so hang tight, give her a couple of minutes. A little bit of a crazy morning. First order of business before we get into what everybody wants to get into, which is the polling results. Check this out. Somebody sent this to me on Locals. I love seeing stuff like this. But I actually never heard my name associated with this whatsoever, but it's really, really kind of cool that it is. So thank you to the Locals, man. I don't think they'll care. So thank you, Jambo, for sharing this. Had a great holiday in Bali. Found this interesting. The sublimity of his commanding presence kind of looks like Rich too. The guy who did it. It's called the Barris Dance. The Barris Dance is a traditional Balinese war dance, which glorifies the manhood of the Balinese warrior and displays the sublimity of his commanding presence. The word Barris means line and refers to the warriors who fought for the kings of Bali. Man, that's pretty cool. I've never heard of that before. And not that I'm an expert on Bali or anything, but that is really pretty neat. All right, so yesterday I put this up because we do have some, like I said, I'd like to give everybody a chance, just so methodology speaking, when somebody does begin the interview, depending on the mode, and most all the time we have a way for them to do this. It's part of, look, I don't want to give it away here, secret sauce, but it's part of it that we do give people time to finish their interview. They get, reminded they can save and continue. Not everybody has, especially if it's a longer survey. It takes 8 minutes or more to take. That's a long survey for people. So we give, the non orange man bad voter time to finish their surveys. All right. So giving them a little bit of time, it's not going to make much of a deal at this point. I mean, I see what I see, and I think that's generally where it stands. Yesterday on Locals, that's the point, signing up to peoplespundit.locals.com, you will see things like this first. I want to talk a little bit about what I see in the nomination polling, but then also this general election, whatever things are shaping up to be. I will say this. It's early, but it does look like there will be very high participation, probably in both the primaries and in the general election. We talk about this vote by mail thing, and how Democrats used it to increase voter turnout historically in 2020 to make Trump the first incumbent president ever to increase his vote and lose. I'm looking at this right now, and I would not be surprised. Like I was talking about with Eric Hunley and Mark on the show on last Friday. I wouldn't be surprised if this turnout did exceed 2020, which is important to what we're going to go over here in a little bit. We're going to, what I put in the description here was, how big is this Trump or bust vote? How big is it? And then how big is it compared to everybody else? There are two, and I actually just found this out. I wasn't looking until now, or until earlier today, but there really are two candidates or potential candidates that have a very big consequential impact on whether or not they're the nominee, on whether voters would not vote at all, or whether voters would consider voting for the other party. And those two, and maybe this doesn't surprise you, but honestly, it did me, because one of them fared so poorly in the nomination polling. One is Donald Trump, and then the other one is Robert Kennedy. And looking at his numbers, maybe he just put out a tweet and said, I'm exploring a run. The media hates his guts. They don't really cover him. Maybe that's what's going on here. I've seen candidates go from low single digits, mid single digits to the front runner status many times in my lifetime. So, but as of right now, I do wonder where the Democratic Party is, because there were a ton of people who said, I will vote in the Democratic primary. But then when we get to it, they say RFK. I'm going to vote for RFK. And then if it's not RFK, which I'm going to show you the wording of the question, how we did this. If it's not RFK, it's almost like they're not even a Democrat, or not, not, you'll see. All right. So that's number one. And then number two, the general election head-to-head matchups. I had said to Glenn Greenwald in a response tweet last week how he was saying, and I think it's pretty clear Glenn Greenwald likes Ron DeSantis. All right. Or at least, he's not traditional when it's, well, actually, that's not true. He is classical liberal. He is a classical liberal. The party is not filled with classical liberals anymore. Let's get real. The party is filled with Alvin Braggs, who will abuse their office to prosecute a former president for a nothing burger. That's the statute of limitations has run out on. I mean, understand, folks, the man who brought this case broke the record for the number of years he's been sentenced to federal prison for a lawyer, Michael Avenatti. So that's how old this stuff is. 5 years, statute of limitations, 7-year-old charge. I mean, it's a 7-year-old case. There are ways New York prosecutors can get around this. By the way, you should definitely check out the clip from Viva Barnes yesterday. Eric Hunley tweeted it. I retweeted it. I digress. Going back to it, there was a survey that Glenn Greenwald had highlighted that said how young Republicans are anti-intervention. And he tweeted, well, this is why they're scared of Ron DeSantis. And I don't know how that makes sense to me. Ron DeSantis has now, tried to make a statement on Ukraine, or last week he did, but he did because he was falling, because people were concerned about his positions on these issues. Anyway, all of the polling I did, and the vast majority, I don't know that I saw polling to contradict this by anybody else. But all of the polling we've done, all of the polling from people that we consider to be, fair and honest, even if they're wrong, they're at least trying to be honest. All of it shows that these younger Republicans are not really Republicans. They're Trumplicans. And they're part of this coalition we're going to talk about today, which really is a Trump or bust coalition. 18 to 24 years old. I mean, when I say some of these numbers, you're going to crap. And we're going to compare them to some of the other candidates. We did poll hypothetical Joe Biden versus Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis. Why did we do that? And I should have done Vivek now that I think back. And truth be told, we will do Vivek next time, because Vivek, for the first time ever, has registered now on our screen. Before, he was significantly, statistically insignificant. I'm serious. And sometimes he didn't even register on some of the stuff that we've done for other people so far that has not been public. He got 1% once. And then the first time we did it, he didn't really get anything because he had announced, but nobody really knew who he was. He picked up, I think there's just the day that Donald Trump hit 60. All right. Which I got a lot of people big mad at me for putting the chart up. The day that Donald Trump hit 60, later that night, Vivek started pulling like 5%. Now it's a 3-day rolling average, basically. So he's not going to be at 5. I think the last time we checked, he was like at 3 or something. I can look, but it's not, again, I want to be careful. I always am with how, he's going to be, he might be at 4. Let's see. Why? Because young voters, let's talk about this and isolate this. If they're not part of the coalition of I will vote for Donald Trump or else, if they're not part of that and they're just younger voters who are looking for something different, they cringe at the thought of voting for anybody else. Vivek is number 2 with voters who are 18 to 24 years old and voting in the Republican primary. I think that's incredible. DeSantis' strongest group is 65 to 74. All right. And from that point, he losing every other group, but 75 plus super seniors actually go back to Trump, which was a little bit surprising to me. I thought that if I kept 65 plus, and I was right, that would be DeSantis's best group. But if you break that out from 65 to 74 and 75 up, it really is just a 65 to 74 group. And look, I'm just calling how I see it. It's the Mitt Romney voter. That kind of Republican, that is his strongest group. All right. And then the super seniors, I don't know why this is. And when something we're going to have to explore and pay a little bit more attention to, maybe we can devise some questions that can help explain it. But the fact is, I'm a little bit confused by that result. I thought DeSantis' strongest group would be 75 plus. But I was wrong. All right. So let's take a look at this. I put this up yesterday. How big is the Trump or bust vote? And understand there will be some responses added to this. All right. But, generally, after all of this polling, I mean, we've already interviewed 2,000 plus. So, this thing is baked in. Over 1,000 Republican primary voters nationally. Over 1,000 alone. All right. And by the way, independents at this point are about split. I mean, in the whole country generally is about split on in which primary are you going to vote. I'd be surprised if that held, although Democrats are pretty enthusiastic. I'll tell you right now, they're not enthusiastic about Joe Biden. At first, I thought for the first day or two, Laura and I were kind of scratching our heads because everyone else has Joe Biden in the 30s. And I wanted to ask that question, do you want somebody else to run? But I thought that's not, Barnes and I talked about it on what are the odds? What's the value in that? When we see what his support is, then we'll know whether or not they want somebody to run. Oh, and by the way, that's I got to amend what I said. Kennedy and Trump definitely are the most consequential, but somebody who is somewhat consequential is Michelle Obama. There is a group of voters who will not vote, they say, if it's not Michelle Obama. And there's an even bigger group who say they would vote probably for the Republican nominee. I know that's weird, but if you really think about it, those voters are out there, folks. They are. They're just not politicos like we are, and they don't see politics through the prism that we did. All right. But again, she's not she's not beating Joe Biden in the nomination. It's just that he is weak, and he did once I thought we were going to have him a little bit higher than most, and maybe even significantly higher looking at some of the demographics. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. He's in the 30s. It's the weakest. I think can somebody else show me an example of a weaker incumbent? I mean, Trump was a supposedly defeated incumbent president, yet he still got record high shares of the Republican vote in the primary. Joe Biden's in the freaking 30s. I don't think I've ever seen that. You know what? Put that on the calendar, Laura. That's something we have to research. We may have to go back pretty far in time, maybe even back to the days of Gallup. But I don't know if there's another example of an incumbent president sitting at, and currently Joe Biden is sitting at 34% unweighted with things. And by the way, the weights aren't that bad. It won't have to be a very heavy weight, which I explained on Locals last night. All right. So anyway, how big is the Trump or bust vote? We asked voters who indicated they will vote in the primaries for the presidential nomination the following question. Thinking about the general election. And this little short code right here, if question value and the ID equals 302, this is called an array, right? Passing an array. That's what it looks like in the script of the actual software. Okay. So you're going to see a name in there, and I'm going to explain this in a minute. But if you chose Ron DeSantis, then in this question, when it comes to you, you will see Ron DeSantis's name in lieu of that placeholder, that shortcut. All right. And it's, again, an array. If you chose Donald Trump, you will see Donald Trump. If you chose Vivek, you will see Vivek. If you chose Nikki Haley, you get the picture. All right. Both, and again, this is Republicans. So if the person they chose does not receive the Republican nomination, would you vote for the party's nominee, consider voting for the Democratic nominee, or not vote at all? Now, for the record, we also posed this question to Democrats. In that case, the question reads as follows. Thinking about the general election, if, again, the value, an ID 302, does not receive the Democratic nomination, would you vote for the party's nominee, consider voting for the Republican nominee, or not vote at all? And by the way, when we get to this, I'm going to check for an update to see if it has marginally changed at all. All right, so regardless, this is called piping. We are taking voters' responses from a prior question, not to be confused with logic, which we talked about. We're taking voters' responses from a prior question, in this case, for whom they intend to vote in the primary for the presidential nomination, and inserting that response into a subsequent question. So they are asked this after they respond to who they will vote for in the primary. These are voters in this graph you're about to see. These are voters who will, 1, vote in the Republican primary for president, and 2, who chose Donald Trump. Again, unweighted, it won't be that much of a weight, but it is more likely than not that these numbers will be slightly worse when they're weighted, given which groups are responsible for each answer. And I'll explain more of that below. But we're not talking about a huge weight here, folks, so don't expect some giant shift. I would vote for the party's nominee, 74%. That's it. In other words, any nominee who is not the former president can only rely on a little less than 3/4 of his vote. I would consider voting, and by the way, yeah, he's well over 500 now, so I have to go and check. But I will consider voting for the other party's nominee, 14%. And that's a little bit worse than average. It doesn't matter. Republican, Democrat, it doesn't matter. There is usually about 15%, 10 to 15% wobble. And a party's nominee has got to consolidate their base first. That is step 1 for winning an election, not just a presidential election. And it's very rare. I mean, there are some cases in some states with certain demographics where there could be some weird coalition split and realignment, and then, that candidate still wins. But look, as a rule of thumb, a party nominee for president has got to consolidate their base and get to like 90% at least. And then you obviously want to win over persuadable voters. Forget about, the term independent, persuadable voters. And that's, part of the secret. So, I mean, that's part of the secret sauce. All right. So this is perhaps most important. I would not vote at all came in 12%. And let me just double check here while you guys wait on me here. Let me go to just isolating Trump voters and asking for an update real quick. I just want to make sure it's not much different, which it's not going to be. But if there is a difference, even if it's tiny and marginal, I will tell you. Okay. So actually, it's not at all that different. It's really not. 73.9%. I wouldn't vote for the party's nominee. 14 flat. I would consider voting for the other party's nominee. I would not vote at all. 12.1 ticked up just a hair, but not that much. For comparison, only 3% of Ron DeSantis's voters say they would not vote at all if he is not the nominee. All right, let me just make sure, just to be fair, has that changed at all? And I'm going to go ahead and go out on a limb and say no. Things are mostly baked into the cake. Nope, has not changed at all. 3% would not vote. 14.7% would consider voting for the other party's nominee. And a little over 82% would vote for the party's nominee. So already, and again, you check with Nikki Haley, you look at Nikki Haley, which is a lot less. Like the sample size gets a lot smaller because Ron DeSantis, got some like less, I think, than 200 responses. Nikki Haley got 60. She's low. Only 6.5% said they would not vote Nikki Haley's voters. So, again, negligible. Remember, the sampling error overall is 2.1. So we're looking at some bigger, you're looking at some bigger subgroup sampling errors. There's, room there. But looking at this, again, from statistically significant point of view, the only one who's not negligible is Donald Trump's. All right. And that includes Vivek, by the way. When you consider that turnout could be much higher, or not much higher, but let's say it's roughly 2020 or a tad higher. I mean, folks, you're talking about 8 to 10 million votes. You could be more. It could be more. It could be 15% given sampling errors. And then you're talking, I mean, God, if the total vote together, because there are a ton of like new voters and mind changers, if you look at Trump's coalition against Biden, that's a lot of votes. There isn't much of a difference when you know, because the media loves to talk about how many Republicans Trump lost in 2020 and then MAGA lost in 2022, when in reality, if you look all around the map, the truth is even McConnell and McCarthy's candidates suffered base erosion like that in some of these races. Everyone is pretty much starting out with the same base, except in this case. And by the way, for Joe Biden, let's just give you, for Joe Biden, it's actually there's a little bit of a warning sign for Biden. All right. So when it comes to Joe Biden, a little less than Trump, about 9% said they would not vote at all if it's not Joe Biden. So that's significant, but not as bad as Trump's. But if you're looking at how much interest people are saying they have in the Democratic primary, I do believe there are people in the Democratic primary, if given a candidate like RFK, they would vote in the general. But if it's not RFK, not only could they not vote, wait until you see it. I'm just going to wait until it's completely weighted before I blast this number out. But when this poll is finally published here, which will be very soon, look at the percentage of RFK's vote that would vote for a Republican. And I think we all know who they're talking about, right? So it's big. It's a big deal. It's a big deal. I think Democrats, they're going to go their way. The party is going to go the way it wants to go. I just think that RFK is a real problem and even though he's polling, low in the nomination polling in the general election, we should have done hypotheticals with RFK. Maybe next time we will, because the hypothetical is going to be, illuminating, right? Anyway, so moving on, groups, why when weighted could this be a little bit worse than it is here? Groups that are underrepresented, again, not to be confused with inadequately sampled. All right, so a lot of times you will see or hear people say, this is not a good poll, Democrats are oversampled. That's not the correct term. Overrepresented is the correct term. Are largely responsible for these are people, the underrepresented ones and again, you never want to wait up to compensate, we have, and that's what always takes us a little, we always gather enough for these groups. And when it is finally taken into consideration, it's not raw, then that will change the result a little bit. Although, I don't expect it to be much more, but it probably will be marginal. So let's say the raw stays at 12. It may go to like 14, 15. It's possible. That seems like a lot to me, a little bit of a jump. I think it'll probably be more negligible than that, but I just want people to hear that from me. So when it is released, there are no surprises. Those who say they would not vote at all, that are Trump voters, these are some of the groups we immediately saw, okay? 18 to 24, 25 to 29, 40 to 49, Hispanic, Black, some college or have an associate degree, have no college degree, have a high school degree, but not a pre or secondary level education. So basically, in a nutshell, you need these people if you're a Republican nominee. I just don't. When I'm looking at the interest that Democrats have in this election, it's not uncommon, which is what I told somebody who asked a question down here. It is not uncommon for and by the way, I want to get up to that because that was a good point. Jim asked a really good question. It is not uncommon for parties to want to defend their president, so they're more enthusiastic. They come out like crazy. Think about Trump. His voters were more enthusiastic. Think about Obama. His voters were more enthusiastic. They obviously were at the end of the day. Black women specifically, that is who reelected Barack Obama. And look at 04, George W. Bush, perfect example. He won because of a turnout advantage, and he won about 3.5 million Democrats, but he won because of a turnout advantage. Anyway, so I look, this answer right here, I stand by. It's not just DeSantis, it's everybody else. What Republicans are looking at here, missing these age groups, the task they have ahead of them, they need a massive decrease in Democratic turnout to win. Massive. And at this point, I just don't believe that's going to happen. I'm being real with you folks. Dead real. Interest and likelihood are very high, and Democrats are very motivated. If you're counting on them to stay home or cross the aisle, yeah, and you're sadly mistaken. So Jonathan says, if Trump's not the nominee, they can kiss the election goodbye. I mean, at this point, that's the way it looks. Even though Trump has all this baggage that comes with it, you can't overlook these groups. Now, how does his numbers look with young voters? This is really interesting. Whether we're talking the general or the primary, it's a big talking point for Trump. Whoa, which, back up. That's what I meant when I was referring, and I lost my train of thought, but referring to, what's his name? Glenn Greenwald's tweet. He was showing how these young Republican-leaning voters are anti-intervention. And he said, well, that's why, they're so afraid of DeSantis. I don't know where he's pulling that from, because DeSantis is not doing well with young voters. He's not doing well with young voters in the primary, and he's not doing well with young voters in the general election. In the primary, Trump is crushing everybody with young voters. Among 18 to 24, Vivek has more support than DeSantis. Trump leads by more than 4-1. In a general election, Trump trails Biden by 10 points among 18 to 24-year-olds. That's it. DeSantis trails Biden by 30. 25 to 29, not much better, but Jim specifically asked me about the 18 to 24 group, and he was pointing out something, which, all data is anecdotal, but he said, I'm a young 18 to 24 voter myself, and I cannot begin to tell you how many people are Trump-only voters in my age group. Jim, that may be anecdotal, like people point out, but I'm telling you, it's there. I see it. It's there. It's a major problem. And I don't know why anyone, frankly, would even be surprised by this finding, considering we had other elections that we could look at, 18, just look from 16 to 2022. When Donald Trump is not on the ballot, they lose a big chunk of vote. It's not that the margin with some of these voters, it's younger voters, the margin will be at play, but it's not the margin. Like, just take non-college whites. Republicans still won them by 30%, like Trump does. The problem is they were too little of a share of the overall electorate. They did not come out. Look at 16 and look at 2020 and go look at Iowa and Ohio. Go look at young voters in the Midwest. Trump carries young voters in Iowa. He doesn't trail them by a little bit. He carries them. In 16, he carried 18 to 29 in Ohio. And damn near did. I don't know if they revised the exit polls. I'd have to go back and look. But I would be surprised if Biden won them by more than 5 points. Very, very close. All right, so, I'm sorry. My son is listening to me in the other room, my little son, and I hear myself talking, and it's weird. So I'm like needing to mute the mic to tell Laura, just move him to the other room, babe, Yeah, so I don't know why anybody would be surprised by this. It is a major problem. 2022 should have been a wake-up call. Instead, it was a blame Trump call. If I had to like ballpark this right now, there's a huge third-party candidate vote. And it's not just because there are people who don't like Joe Biden, but won't vote for Trump. And there are people who don't like Trump, but won't vote for Joe Biden. It's big across the board, and it's big for this reason. This is what you need to understand. Hello, Laura. This is what you need to understand. All you're hearing in the media is about how big that vote is when it comes to Trump, because there are voters who just won't vote for Trump. They'll vote for Biden, or they will vote for a third-party candidate. They want that 2020 narrative. Well, the truth is this. We didn't give the voters who say they would not vote. We didn't give them the option of not giving us an answer in 2024 hypotheticals on purpose. We wanted to see, if push comes to shove, if they had to vote, if they didn't have a choice and they had to show up, because we know what's happening with those voters. They're falling out of the voter screen. And that's why with some of the other head-to-heads, it doesn't look like there's a bigger third party. They're falling out of the voter screen if they're not likely to vote, if the nominee is not who they want it to be. So we wanted to force them to tell us, would you vote for the party's nominee? Would you vote for the Democrat? Would you vote for third party? Or would you not vote at all? Even beyond the question I just read to you. Excuse me. Because if you give them the matchup and they have no option to say, prefer not to say, would not vote, all they have is undecided, they're going to have to either pick undecided or third-party candidate. And if, theoretically, if these people are serious about not voting or voting for another candidate, you'll see it in that question. And believe me, it's there. Nikki Haley is not competitive. DeSantis is down to Biden. He is. There's no waiting in the world that's appropriate that would change that. But, I mean, I don't know. I guess he could be competitive. But after what happened, what difference does it make? Being down by 5 or being down by 8? If you don't get these votes out, it doesn't matter. You're going to lose. Vote by mail is going to happen no matter who the nominee is. Look in 2022. It'll be on steroids to defend their incumbent president. It doesn't matter if it's an establishment Mitt Romney-like candidate or if it's a Donald Trump. The only question is whether or not, because it will be a difficult task for the Republican, no matter who it is, the only question is whether or not that Republican nominee can sufficiently draw people to the polls who don't normally vote to offset. Remember locals, what I did the other day with the papers, pretending they're ballots? And folks, you just have to go to locals and see that. And I think I actually made that a free video. So go to locals. If you don't want to hear the whole hour of me rambling, scroll through it and look to see me picking up papers and like counting papers, and you'll hear it for yourself because I can't do it here. You have to reduce the potential pool, whether it's by getting your voters to vote in person early or getting them to mail a ballot in, or having them show up on election day. But I can't even fathom having that conversation with Republicans at this point. If they haven't learned not to leave the election up to 8 hours on election day, then they're beyond all hope. And by the way, the other day you had to hear me explaining. I actually lost my temper a little bit. Laura's like a little. I don't want people wasting my time who don't ask me to speak to somebody if they're just totally clueless. Republicans just want to bundle and grift. The bundlers just want to bundle. The big donors just want to pay for play. They have no vision. It's very difficult. What's that? Yeah, I mean, I normally would sit through the pitch, Laura, but the other night I just couldn't sit through it. I just couldn't. I'm like, if I have to sit here and explain this to you, then this is a waste of my time. And this is why Democrats are so much better. Oh, they're so much better at the data game than Republicans are, because and credit to Democratic mega donors, they put money where it matters. It's funny. A lot of Republicans who even think like, oh, we need our own ballot harvesting or ballot chasing operation. I hear them talk and I think to myself, like, they don't really understand how this went or works. They think like Rona's going to develop a ballot harvesting operation at the RNC or something. That's not how this is or was done. Democratic mega donors gave to political action committees, gave to groups, third-party groups, who then went out and created various programs to get people, normies even, to go out and collect ballots. It was freaking brilliant. It is. And it doesn't hurt that like Apple is like forever helping them. I even just texted it or tweeted it out. It was like a week or two ago. They're great at that. They'll send you this thing, especially if you're in a certain age group. Did you see that there's yet another Republican threat to ban TikTok? Oh, and by the way, don't forget to mail in your ballot. Have you requested an absentee ballot yet? Are you on the permanent absentee ballot list? We can help you with that. And no doubt, as soon as they take action, Democrats are all over it. Pennsylvania, boy, right now, they are furiously all over it. Already. From the local races to the top of the ticket, they're already digging in. Building on existing infrastructure and programs that they had put in place and implemented. So by the time Republicans try to catch up, they will have evolved already into something more efficient. That's the way it works, That's the way it works. You can't see the... Hold on, Kyle. Hold on, buddy. I see you. Okay, there it is. He likes to see the headstock. I don't blame you. It was a little out of the screen. It was a little out of the shot. And it actually looking like that. It looks like it's like right up against the Marshall, but it's not. It's a big deal there. You might notice I'm missing the popcorn. Laura, let me eat it.
He begged to eat it. It was ridiculous. But I also have some questions in the chat, in the private chat.
Yeah, let's do that because I know this is like a makeup episode and I don't have the normal 2 hours that I have, but I think there's a great comment by Andrew right here. Democrats are much more politically involved activists. Republicans like to listen to talk radio, watch Fox and Newsmax, but they don't stay engaged. Andrew is 100% correct. And this is why, Andrew, this is why the question we're fundamentally trying to get at here is, who are these voters who show up for Trump but don't show up for Republicans? And what would Republicans need to do to get them out? I honestly think, sadly, after what happened yesterday, which I'm going to play, it ain't going to be Ron DeSantis. Robert Barnes, I was listening to him last night while I work. He's dead on. I really think this could have ended it, because the point is, even if Ron DeSantis were to pull a rabbit from a hat and beat Donald Trump in this nomination, which Glenn Youngkin apparently doesn't think he's going to do. Glenn Youngkin's already all over it, making calls. Ben and I were laughing hysterically. He's like, Told you that guy wasn't ready for prime time. Youngkin's whole pitch. He's like, I'm sorry to laugh. It's just that Youngkin jumped on that puppy and he was like, see, he's not polished. I told you, he's an awkward man. He cannot toe the line. He can't walk the tightrope. And I'm telling you about that tightrope. Vivek was shaking over the weekend. He cannot walk that tightrope. We're going to need somebody else bringing the big guns. But for the anti-MAGA people, they don't care because their goal really isn't even to win. If DeSantis was to win the nomination, they know they will have fractured MAGA. And then he loses anyway, and his political career is over. This is what Lori's totally Barnes nailed it. And actually, I'll probably play a little clip of Barnes, but before I do, let me play about a minute or so of this. I can't not play this today, and as much as people I'm sure don't want to see it, I can't not play this, folks. I got to play it.
Hi, Megan from the Florida Standard. We wanted to know what your thoughts are on the rumored Trump indictment and if you have any role in it. If charges are brought on him, will you have any role in extradition to New York?
So I've seen rumors swirl. I have not seen any facts yet, and so I don't know what's going to happen.
Rumors swirl.
I do know this.
Rumors swirl. That was the first mistake. It's not a rumor. Come on, let's not play coy.
Manhattan District Attorney is a Soros-funded prosecutor.
All right, we all know he's a Soros-funded prosecutor, but here's the problem, Republican voters, and believe me, we heard a mouthful. Very good, Ron. You fired the Soros-funded prosecutor in the state of Florida. If you understood what it means, truly, to be under the yoke, the political persecution from a Soros prosecutor, which, look, I'll tell you right now, guys like him think they're exempt from this. If they get Trump, if they get him, he's next. We're all next. And the voters are basically like, you just don't understand the times we live in. Cernovich was one of DeSantis's biggest cheerleaders, man. That guy was with pom-poms 24/7 on Twitter. I was thinking of memeing Cernovich with like DeSantis pom-poms. Little Naval Academy tie and everything. And he put it really well on his Substack the other day or whatever he writes on. Last night I read it. Scott Adams sent it out and I read it and he's dead on. The problem is that it's not a talking point. It's a war. Voters know that. This isn't going to work. But the bigger problem comes now.
And so he, like other Soros-funded prosecutors, they weaponize their office to impose a political agenda on society at the expense of the rule of law and public safety. He has downgraded over 50% of the felonies to misdemeanors. He says he doesn't want to even have jail time for the vast majority of crimes. And what we've seen in Manhattan is we've seen the crime rate go up and we've seen citizens become less safe. And so you're talking about this situation with, and look, I don't know what goes into paying hush money to a porn star to secure silence over some type of alleged affair. I can't speak to that. But what I can speak to is that if you have a prosecutor who is ignoring crimes happening every...
Okay, I got to stop it there because I intentionally wanted the chuckle. All right. You know who those chuckles were from? Those chuckles were for, from the Paul Ryans in his corner, the Jeb Bushes in his corner. They think that stuff is hilarious. They think that Stalin-like political persecutions in this country, which is what it is. This is what Stalin did. Cernovich is 100% right. They think that that's somehow funny. They think that this is, that this is like a joke or something. And it can be used as a cheap dig at Donald Trump. I get it. Politics. You're in a race, or really, you're technically not in the race, but you are in a race. This reminded me of a moment which people immediately stole. Did you see this? Did anybody seriously tie this to Scott Walker and his moment, his Mr. Trump, we don't need an apprentice in the White House moment? Did anybody seriously do that? I'm tired of Fox News hosts trolling my Twitter account, and then because they don't have an original thought in their head, and then getting on primetime or getting on daytime, and then basically reading my tweets as if it's their own stuff. My grandmother used to say, "Don't get mad, Richard. Imitation is the highest form of flattery." But you know what? Then give me part of your salary. If you can't do your job and you need to troll my Twitter account to get original ideas, then give me some of your money. Anyway, so this is what it reminded me of. And for those who, probably many of you weren't there and you didn't see it, you didn't hear it. But this is what it reminded me of, without a doubt. And watch Jeb Bush's face in the crowd. The mega donors, the super donors, the establishment, they thought it was great. And by the way, it was like courtesy of George Will's wife. They destroyed Scott Walker's campaign, and that's a tragedy, as Laura will tell you. And I have no problem telling you my own views sometimes, guys. It's separate when I announce that they are in fact my views. I had high hopes for Scott Walker. I thought he was without a doubt the dark horse candidate, even though Fox News wanted Jeb Bush first for sure. I thought that he was somebody who, why was this? Because as I'm polling Iowa and polling New Hampshire, it's like the Republican primary has been this tale of two contests for decades. The conservative alternative wins the Iowa caucus, then the moderate goes on to win New Hampshire, and that's it. What I saw out of Walker was the ability to win both. And there was a reason for that. Because of his job as the governor of Wisconsin, he was able to reach the entirety of the party. So without a doubt, it would have made him, if he stayed true to himself, it would have made him a stronger general election candidate than Jeb Bush. But unfortunately, he didn't stay true to himself. And many of the same people who surround Ron DeSantis right now were those who, tried to get behind Walker and in fact ended his career. His career was over. His presidential race was over within 48 hours after this moment.
What's wrong with this debate? We're not talking about real issues. And Mr. Trump, we don't need an apprentice in the White House. We don't need an apprentice in the White House. We have one right now. He told us all the things we wanted to hear back in 2008.
Look at that smug ass smile. Did you see it? Nodding his head. He thinks that's great. He thinks it's hilarious. The Republican voter thought it was a cheap shot. The Republican voter thought it was a canned zing that George Will's wife wrote on a napkin for him before the debate, and he just was waiting to let it go. It's not the Scott Walker who won recounts, survived recounts. It's not the Scott Walker who ran around Wisconsin shaking hands with people saying, "Listen, even though I don't agree with you or you don't agree with me all the time, I want you to know where I stand and you can trust me to always be me. I'm not going to let special interests change my views. I'm not going to let the donor class change who I am." And then he got in this race, and that's exactly what he did. He became a different person. So again, and I'm looking at some of the comments in here. You DeSantis supporters, you're not freaking hearing me. You didn't listen. Your guy didn't listen to the right people. He didn't listen to the voter. Remember, Laura, very different from, even though this is not what the GOP establishment wants, and you know you're going to be attacked in the media, why is it that you can do these things, but other Republican governors and even redder states cannot? What did he respond with? What did he tell us, Laura? I just don't care what they think. I know the voters are with me. That guy's gone. And voters know it. So, I mean, you can get mad at me for relaying to you what the voters are telling us. And by the way, predictably so. Cernovich was all on the DeSantis train. Steve Deese was all over the DeSantis train. There's a reason all of these influencers hopped off the other day. Hopped off yesterday. Because what they saw was more of the same. For those of us who have been in this game a very long time. These people get their hooks in somebody and they destroy them. They wind up putting on stage press conferences with canned questions, with canned answers, dismiss Stalinist tactics. There were a lot of Republican voters who felt like it was time to move on from Trump. But after what they saw, everybody is reminding them why they stuck with Trump to begin with. And I have been somebody who has been telling Republicans, you've got to figure out how to move on without him. You've got to. He's not a young man. You've got to figure this out before it's too late. And frankly, the only way to do that is to purge these people. The Karl Roves. Just go to the Democratic Party. Why would you be whispering in Ron DeSantis' ear? Paul Ryan, what are you doing? They're hanging around like little leeches, trying to get their power back. They want things to go back to the way they used to be. And they'll use anybody to do it. And it's sad because the presidential bug is a tough one, folks. When you get bit by it, it's a tough one to shake. You have your wife whispering in your ear. Barnes was 100% right about that. They got more political ambition than you do. It's sad. Some of us were giving sound advice. Not because we didn't want the guy to, the point is they don't care who they destroy in their little plans. They don't care they destroyed Scott Walker's career in 2016. By the way, Scott Walker lost 2 years later. Sometimes somebody's just on the ballot one too many times. But do we have to go over the map in Wisconsin again? Take 3 guesses where Scott Walker's margin slipped. Take 3 guesses. Go back and watch the last What Are the Odds and then look at the map. So there it is. So again, the fact is he's here because they didn't listen. They thought this was all just criticism and you could get a bunch of influencers on social media to attack people, to attack pollsters. You know who does that? Democrats. And there was another guy, by the way, who didn't like, who used to attack polls he didn't like. He had a bunch of mean tweets, and everybody said you were indecent if you supported him. So I'm not clear what the difference is here. Exactly, that's Nicholas, exactly. My point is that's exactly right. Trump used to do that. So how are you then going to be in a position? How would you then, if you're going to do things like that, or worse, not do it yourself, but get your influencers to do it for a little chatter? So, how could you argue to voters then that you're any better? Something that probably should have been thought about. But frankly, I really do believe it's too late now. I really hate to tell people who are DeSantis supporters, but I don't think Robert Barnes is overreacting, and I don't think that Mike Cernovich is overreacting. I think it's listen, I would honestly tell him not even to run anymore. That's how bad this looks to me. All right, so while Trump, and I'll just tell you, while Trump didn't hold above 60 the entire time, he did not dip back down to his average of where we have seen him. And in our polling, by the way, we have not had him as high as others, like Morning Consult, and I think Harvard Harris, others nationally had him in the mid to high 50s. I went back and looked. 43 to 52. DeSantis as high as 29, and looked like one day he was at like 31. This was his high peak was a little bit after the midterm. And I mean, he never got single digits. Not now. Maybe we didn't poll early enough, but maybe it would have been if we polled earlier, but he never got single digits. He was always in the double digits. All right. I am going to take a quick break and then we'll get to some of what Laura threw in the chat. But before we do, what time, Laura, I'm going to be on Charlie? What time? 1:30, right?
1:30.
1:30. Okay. Yeah, don't forget.
Eastern Standard Time.
1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I'll talk more about this with Charlie. All right, let's take a real quick break. Why is China hoarding food? Can't imagine. Experts say China's hoarding a massive amount of food. They'll soon have over 2/3 the globe's corn reserves, over half of its rice, and over half of its wheat. But when China is asked about it, they lie. One expert said, of course, they will never admit to doing something like that. Well, what does China know that we don't? When it comes to global food shortages, China is the canary in the coal mine. They're the world's number one food importer. They rely on the rest of the world to keep their people fed. So they can't afford to mess up, or there'll be riots, civil panic, or even worse, when over 1 billion people can't eat. What does this mean for Americans like you and me? 2 words: food shortages. That's why it's a smart idea to stock up on a kit of the best-selling 4 Patriot survival food like Laura and I have done for our family. Create your own stockpile of the best-selling 4 Patriots survival food kits. They're hand-packed in the USA. Kits are compact. They stack easily. They have different delicious breakfasts, lunches, and dinners, and I rave about them all the time, but the 5-star reviews on their website tell you all you need to know about the flavor and taste of these meals. And right now you can get 10% off your first purchase of 4 Patriot survival food by typing in the promo code TPP10 right up there on the screen. At checkout, go to 4patriots.com and use the code TPP10 at checkout to get 10% off your first purchase. Again, one more time, that's 4patriots.com, the number 4, like right there. Use the promo code TPP10. And as I always tell you guys, all right, if you get the best deal is the 3-month kit. Without a doubt, it is. You will get other things with the kit. So if you're looking to buy some other stuff on the side, you may want to see what you get in the kit first. All right. And you definitely want to use that promo code for the kit because that is going to be your best deal and best savings. All right. And by the way, Laura, I keep forgetting. I want this. 4 Patriots home freeze drying system. And the tabletop hydro looks cool too. But I think we need this, babe. All right. Laura and I shopping and moving on. But it's true. I mean, I love 4 Patriots. I've always, there are a lot of great ones out there. I just, the flavor, the taste, the kits really are awesome. They come in totes and you can just stack them up. I mean, the amount I can stick in a little closet is amazing. And, the world's going to hell in a handbasket, folks. In case nobody's noticing. Well, we're talking about all these sideshows, and they are really. They're distractions, even though they're big stories. Stalin-like persecution, political persecutions are big stories. But for the God's sake, they're nationalizing the banks. They don't even have the money to do it or the fake credit and faith to do it. This is the bicycle theory, and we're in a lot of trouble. But you should be healthy while that happens. Laura and I have tried a ton of these different diets, the things you see on TV. And believe me, I'm willing, but they just don't work. Junk science. That's what they are. That's what the doctor called them. Because these fruit and vegetable supplements use extracts of common produce department fruits and vegetables that have few health benefits. I take Field of Greens because it's the whole organic fruit and vegetable, not a watered down supplement. And it's backed by their Better Health Promise. Each ingredient in Field of Greens was scientifically chosen to support vital organs, heart, lungs, and kidney health. Others support my immune system, blood pressure, metabolism, and healthy weight loss. Very important to me. I don't eat as healthy as I should. Who of us does, right? You need 5 healthy servings of fruit and vegetables a day. Even if you do 3 squares and you are mindful about it, it's very difficult to meet that goal. That's why I take Field of Greens. And like me, you'll probably look and feel healthier fast and have way more energy. But your best proof will be at your next checkup when your doctor says, whatever you're doing, it's working, so keep it up. Let me get you started with 15% off today. Go to fieldofgreens.com. Use the promo code TPP for the People's Pundit. That's promo code TPP at fieldofgreens.com. And as always, we all love to hear your feedback. All right. So I want to know, and it's not just for this. Just to answer somebody's question, everybody is different. Laura likes the berry. I like the lime or lemon lime. But there is a flavorless. If you already have a favorite drink, you want to throw it in. Body Armor is a good one for it. That's up to you. But whatever flavor you do choose, don't forget to hit us up because we'd love to hear it. All right, we'd love to hear what you think. All right. Let's go back to the questions, Laura, first, and then we'll take another break in a little bit here because I know I got Charlie. How well does RFK do with black voters? How well does he need to do to be a serious threat to Biden? You know what? Let's look by race. Let's look by that's a good question. I haven't had a chance to really dig because that's why I love MarketSite, because the crosstabs that you build with MarketSite can be nested beautifully, isolated. Let's look and see where RFK. Let me look at, for instance, white voters in the Democratic primary. Biden. Where are you? Okay. So actually, Joe Biden's doing better with white voters overall than he is with Democratic primary voters overall. 37.3% white vote. Robert Kennedy's getting about 3.5% of the white vote. I mean, he's low on the totem pole. Let's look at black and African American Democratic primary voters. Just a little over 1%. So where is this guy's support? I mean, I guess it's mostly white vote just being distributed. He's getting about 2% of the Hispanic vote. And again, Biden's getting 29. So it's not, these Democratic voters don't really know what they want to do here. They don't. Okay, so here, Asian voters, Asian non-educated Asian voters, even more. I can see clearly there. And then other, let's look at Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander, Asian voters, he's getting about 5% of them, 3% of Pacific Islander, Native Hawaiian, Alaska Native, American Indian, the other category, but we do it expanded in a national poll and in states where there's a bigger population of them. But with those voters, by the way, Michelle Obama does not do well. She only gets about 5% of them. And we threw her in there because there is a lot of, I don't think it's serious and I don't think she'd do it, but I do think it's worth putting in there. Bernie Sanders does just about as good as Joe Biden with these other categories, which doesn't surprise me. Joe Biden was getting stomped among non-white voters in the early states until South Carolina. I don't see a group, and I just went through it real quick. Let's look at black again. I mean, outside of black voters, wow. Biden's only getting 29.5% of Democratic primary voters who are black. Kamala Harris, 16.9, Michelle Obama, 16.4, Bernie Sanders, 12. This is where RFK is struggling and not being able to get out of the lower single digits, mid-single digits, because he's got to get more black support. So I'm glad you asked that question. And who was that? Because Nico. Thanks, Nico. That really pulled it out for me, and I would have wound up going over this later, but that's what it is. The Kennedy name is not getting that vote right now. It's coming from what he does get out of whites is non-college whites and Asians. Those are his strongest groups. However, I know it's going to blow your mind. It is a small sample set because not that many people obviously chose him. But let's go to his voters only and take a look at them. All right. This is great. I'm glad you brought this up. Let me drag this over here to make it easier. Not vote at all is only about 7.5%. That's not bad. I would vote for the party's nominee is less than I would consider voting for the other party's nominee. So people who say they will vote for RFK I think it's like a majority, some bare majority are persuadable to vote Republican, not just any other, but persuadable to vote Republican. Of Kennedy's primary voters, Biden only leads Trump by 15. That's it. That's it. Actually, wait, 14.2. 14. I rounded wrong. So, unbelievable. And comparing that, by the way, RFK's voters, Biden has a 26-point lead. Oh, no. 37-point lead over Ron DeSantis with RFK's voters. So if you're an RFK primary voter, considering the sampling is not that big, it's kind of small. It looks pretty close between him and Biden, Trump and Biden. With DeSantis, it is not. It's overwhelming. 37 points. Those voters will go for Joe Biden. Nikki Haley is 34. This, it's bad. Ooh, check this out. Among RFK's voters, how likely do you think it is that the Central Intelligence Agency was involved in the assassination of former President John F. Kennedy? 44.4% very likely, 18.5% somewhat likely. So over 6 in 10, think it's at least somewhat likely. That's interesting. Although, are you at all surprised by that, Laura? I mean, not at all, because if you're going to vote for Kennedy, and by the way, Kennedy's voters is the media and entertainment industry, right? When I'm not going to lay it all, the prompt all out, but compared to your own personal beliefs and values, which most closely describes the culture in today's media and entertainment industry, it is hostile to my values, 37%. It is neutral to my values, 33.3%. It reflects my values, 29.6%. So, or, let's just call it 30, a third, 37. Hostile is +4 among RFK's primary vote. Ooh. I know, and by the way, most of them, of those who said they would vote for RFK in the primary, a little over 60% are self-identified Democrats. About 4% are something else, and a little point is Republican. Independent is about a third. So he has a larger independent share than a lot of the other candidates. Liberal, 37%, 52% moderate, 11% conservative. I'm trying to give you the profile of an RFK voter. Female, 59.3% female, 40.7% male. They're young. Yeah, and young, and there is some, Robert was right, 65 plus, 41%. So it's like this big old gap. 40 to 49 is only 7. So there's this big old gap with all these other voters. You get seniors, and that's almost half of his vote, and then it's young. It's crazy. Wait till you see this. This is really something. It's 89% white, roughly, 4% Hispanic, 4% Asian, 4% Black. Roughly. I'm as far as national origin among the white voter, about a half is English, identifies as English. Otherwise, some people say American. 13% German, 17% Irish, which isn't surprising. 5% Scot-Irish, right? And Italians. There are Italians in here too, almost 9%. So that's really interesting. Killing it with Koreans for some reason. That's weird. I don't know. Maybe not. I don't know. I'll be honest. I don't know everything about everybody's culture. I honestly don't know. But that's interesting. Let me see if I can get some others before we go. How are Trump's numbers in young and urban America? This is a big deal. Let's look at urban vote, and let's just go to area. Let's look at urban vote, and then I'm going to give you everyone's hypothetical. Where are you? What region do you live? No, that's region. Sorry. And by the way, these people who don't show up, by the way, who are you if you're a Trump voter and you say it's Trump or bust? You are in very important regions of the country. All right. So obviously the urban vote is very Democratic. Biden is leading DeSantis in urban America by 30. He's only leading Trump in urban America by about 19. All right. So that's that secret vote, man, that Trump has if he can get it out, which I think that we would have to lean on the fact that he is going to get it out. He has shown that he can do that. Even in 2020, one of the very little talked about stories is how well Trump did in certain urban areas, how much he increased his vote. Biden is beating Nikki Haley by about 33 points in urban America. So just as a comparison, he's chopping about 11% off the closest Republican in urban America. And as far as age, I read the 18 to 24, but interestingly enough, who are these people? By age. Yeah, so of urban, it's going to be 18 to 24, 25 to 29, 30 to 39, 40 to 49, 50 to 64, and 65 plus. Okay. Almost 10% of that urban vote for Trump is 18 to 24. Another 8.5 is 25 to 29. It only 11% is 65 plus. 50 to 64 is a little over 21. The biggest group is 30 to 39, which doesn't surprise me. That's prime working class age. That's Trump's core pitch, right? 34%. So yeah, that is definitely part of the story. And who did that, Jim? Yeah, Jim. It's a big part of the story. I don't know, Bill Go. I think you could be wrong, but I swear that RFK Jr. has slept with his kid's babysitter. I don't know. What would happen to polls if we had term limits? What a great question. I think that honestly, I maybe would even love that more, because then we would go to presidential horse racing, right? And how people did in the presidential race would gauge how well of a pollster they are and how accurate they may be when they do what George Gallup really wanted them to do, which is inform lawmakers. The polling is supposed to have a critical role in self-governing societies. People have to know what the constituency supports or does not.
And they even went on to saying, even the term limits goes out towards the staffers and all personnel that are in the White House during that time. So it's an entire term limit for the whole entire White House. You're muted, my love.
That's what was so brilliant about Trump's plan with lobbyists. It's these people, they move from an office, Laura, and then they go right to K Street. They go from a government public office to K Street, and it's dirty. And in his White House, you couldn't do it. And that's a big deal, because what are those people leaving to do? They're leaving to sell influence. All right, let me try to get through a couple of these, and I do want to play Barnes real quick. Yep. So why hasn't Sarah Sanders endorsed Trump? This is another one that's got a lot of people scratching their heads. Without a doubt. Does anyone seriously think that Sarah Sanders would be the governor of Arkansas right now if she wasn't Donald Trump's press secretary? Maybe somebody else would have beat her. There was another Trump-like candidate that could have been a serious contender in that race. Why aren't RNC mega donors focused more on things like Daily Wire and getting amnesty for illegal aliens? Absolutely. They need somebody to fold their laundry via. That's just the truth, that's a good question. When the economy enters a recession, what percent will change polls? Vote for stability or direction. Interestingly, you will see right track, wrong track improved. It was so bad before. So I'm not at all surprised it came up somewhat. Rasmussen had it as well, but others still have it kind of wide. I'm curious to see what the economic confidence index looks like. I haven't had a chance to review it in great detail. Plus, as you know, there's a lot that goes into computing the sub indicators and then the overall indexes. So, it's kind of hard to just glance at it, but when there's a big neutral, it can impact it in a way you don't think. If there's obviously a big negative, that's easy to spot, but it's not always because they're relative values. But that's a really good question. I mean, honestly, I don't know yet. If there was a catastrophe of a financial crisis, then this is going to be, I don't know. I could see two outcomes. One, voters shut down because they're like, they did it again. Nothing ever changes. I hate it. I hate this country. I'm done. And then there could be obviously like an 08 situation, just a visceral blowback against the administration. That's a really good question. I think we'd have to keep an eye on that, very interesting indeed. All right, let me take a real quick, because we're 1:15. Let me take a real quick break, and then I'll get to the rest of them. And also, Barnes, I want to run what Barnes was saying, because I think Barnes made a lot of sense. And I don't exactly know the spot in the video where Barnes did it, but it is interesting. Speaking of which, like I said before, I ate Jam and Beans coffee. Thank you, Laura, for letting me do it. They have a great deal for you guys right now. All right. And I know a lot of us, we got calls from them, and that's the kind of company they are. They're artists when they roast coffee, and they're patriots and professionals at the same time. I'm glad a lot of you have ordered from them, and I know that you were not let down. If you want to jump on a subscription, right now they're offering an amazing deal. Use the promo code TPP40 at checkout. If this is your first subscription, you'll not only get 40% off that initial subscription sign up, you'll still get the People's Pundit 10% discount every month when it renews. Dynamite deal. I don't know how long they're going to keep it for. TPP10 at checkout. And by the way, looks like the most popular popcorn flavors are sour cream and chives, buffalo, and dill, right? So you guys are taking my my suggestions, definitely, but they're all delicious. They all are. But give their coffee a try. Subscribe, sign up to get it. They are. I mean, they got a different flavor for everybody, and I like variety myself, so it's nice to have it. But the coffee, you will not be let down by it. I've got nothing but good reviews and responses. When you get it, let me know. I'd like to hear about it, and send Laura and I some comments. You will love it. Whether you're somebody who needs a quick K-Pod or K-Cup because you're busy and you need convenience, or maybe you're both like me, where you like to sit and steep and you like a French press. If you have the time, they got something, a flavor for everyone. And I like deep, bold, and rich flavors, even in my medium roasts. And man, like I said, coffee roasting is an art. These guys are artists, and they're also patriots, by the way. So again, it's Jam and Bean. It's on the screen right now. .com, promo code TPP40. It's an incredible deal. All right. Let's see what else do I got here. How does it change the calculus if Trump doesn't get indicted? And I think there's a lot of open questions here, Nicholas. I mean, what if he doesn't get indicted? Or what if he gets indicted and he beats them? What if, I think at this point, I had been under the impression that I think the Trump indictment was baked into the cake. I really do, especially the man was caught on video saying, grab him by the... I just don't see how a political prosecutor, with a expired statute of limitations exceeded charge, which is usually a misdemeanor. If you're unlucky, you pay a fine, never get charged with a felony, but he upped it to a felony. I just don't see it. And by the way, has it happened today? I was actually hearing yesterday that Michael Cohen did so poorly because in New York, they have a little bit of a different system. You can respond to the prosecutor in New York, the grand jury. You can kind of answer the grand jury as a defense, right? The defense can speak before, these actions are taken. And I heard it was not good for Michael Cohen, so that they were thinking of actually postponing this a little bit. And I don't know. I'm not in the courtroom. I just hear what I hear. But I wouldn't be surprised, because Michael Cohen is the least credible witness in the history of witnesses in public show trials. I mean, this guy is unbelievable. You know what? Instead of me doing it, let me let Barnes do it. Well, we got a couple of minutes left here. Let me let Barnes just carry this away, because, I mean, honestly, it's a little bit of a joke. And Yeah. So it's titled "What Ron DeSantis Did Today Is End His Political Career." Let's listen. All right. Let's listen in. Barnes comes out the gate on this. But remember, Michael Avenatti is like broken a record for a lawyer for the most time sentenced in federal prison. This is the guy who brought us this. Barnes is hilarious. I may skip around a little bit to get to the part I need to get to.
Needs to actually be for the campaign. It can't incidentally benefit the candidate, or all kinds of money is suddenly a crime. I mean, that would be a huge problem. That's a void for vagueness, unconstitutional interpretation.
He's talking about the Trump case. I'm going to let this rock a little so you can get this because I think it's important.
Application, as most legal scholars agreed later on in the John Edwards case, was the case. But at least in each of those instances, you have a third party making a donation above the limit. That's technically the crime, if you will. That's not the case with Trump. If you're going to prosecute Trump, you're saying Trump gave too much to himself? That there is no limit. Trump can give as much as he wants to himself. He has a First Amendment right. The U.S. Supreme Court has already established that. You can't put a limit on how much you spend on your own candidacy. So that's why the Cohen prosecution is actually contrary. The whole basis of it was that Cohen made the payment and not Trump. And so you can't turn around and blame Trump for something you said Cohen was guilty of because Cohen made the payment and not Trump. And I'll say, oh, you know what? All along it was actually Trump.
Well, you can if you are a political hack who is in a one-party system. That's the danger of one-party rule. It is. It's the truth. Even though you would want your party to dominate things, this is the danger of one-party rule, where federal prosecutors who are career guys know this case is not a solid case. It's not credible. And yet, some guy who's been fixated with pinned tweets, basically obsessed over prosecuting Donald Trump, takes it up instead. That's the danger of it. Federal prosecutors have to worry about career baggage. They make a mistake like this. They don't.
This is why the Southern District of New York said the infamous political corrupt
SDNY, right?
Even said there's no basis to indict Trump because we couldn't have indicted Cohen if we could have indicted Trump, because we never could indict Trump under the theory. The only way we could indict Cohen was if Trump did not make the payment and did not authorize the payment, which
the SDNY is notoriously corrupt and notoriously political, and they passed on this case. And that's saying something. Compared to like what Robert Mueller did up in Boston for years with Whitey Bulger.
By the way, was Cohen's original position. Then he changed it. Now apparently he's saying, "Oh, this was all done at Trump's behest." But even if it was, that's not a crime. There's no crime in hush money payments. There's nothing illegal about. Maybe DeSantis doesn't know that. Maybe they didn't teach that at Harvard Law while he was running down to Guantanamo to be the deep state's little bitch like he was for a decade.
Oh, snap.
What Ron DeSantis did today is end his political career. It is over. There is no President DeSantis. You can hear it here first. It is done and is finished. It is gone.
It is, guys. It is. I'm not telling you this because I support you. I'm telling you it's over. And Robert is right. And the point is, even if he wins, he loses. Even if he wins the nomination, he loses. Look at those people. They're not going to vote. It's not going to happen. It's over.
Too politically incompetent to know how to handle something as easy to handle as this was. And instead, he had to take a little pot shot at Trump. Fair game to take pot shots at Trump. Trump's taking pot shots at him. This wasn't the time to do it.
That's right.
This was rally around against weaponized politicization of the prosecutorial process. And if he was smart, he would use his power as governor, which he does with a Florida resident being subject to another state's prosecution, to challenge it. Now, had he say, look, I'm not going to allow the extradition of Donald Trump from New York, and I'm going to challenge in court. Now, based on prior case law, Florida would have likely lost that. The U.S. courts have already ruled in other cases. They originally ruled one way, then they came
right. Well, we don't need to go over the law history of it, but that's not the point, is what Barnes goes on to say. The point is you need to show and demonstrate to the electorate that you understand the world you live in right now and the danger that this isn't about Donald Trump. Tucker said something the other night. Benny put it up as like a zinger, but Benny, I love you, but he missed the point. The point is, what Tucker pointed out that is most important is that this is the end of the road for democracy if they get away with this. It's the end of the road. Voter sovereignty, what little we have left of this charade of a democratic process, will be over. Anytime, whether the candidate's on the right or the left, there is somebody for the little guy. The status quo will use the corrupted justice system to take them out. What will happen? A chilling effect. Nobody worth running will run. They will not line up to be prosecuted, and you will have your pick from the state-sponsored choice of candidates that they put before you, just like it was before the Trump and Bernie era. But unfortunately for Bernie supporters, we call him Bend Over Bernie for a reason, because not once but twice did they screw that man, and he just bent over to take it. Pathetic, Bernie. That's why you lost your coalition in 2016, and they went to Donald Trump. All right, check me on Charlie. We're going to crunch this poll today, get it out to you, all right? And we're going to have a lot more to talk about tomorrow. All right, thanks, guys. I tried to make it a little bit extra today, right? I was going to do it in an hour, but I tried to make it a little extra. There was a lot to talk about, a lot to get through. Thanks to the sponsors, as always, and extra thanks for those of you who support our sponsors. That's how the world goes around. Don't forget, you can go to jamandbean.com, use the promo code TPP40 to get 40% off that first subscription. You'll still get the People's Pundit 10% off in the renewals. It's a great deal. I don't know how long it's going to last. Take advantage of it. Of course, for Patriots, Laura, I want my jerky maker. All right. Use the promo
And I want my garden tool set.
All right, it's a deal. Use the promo code TPP10 to get 10% off. The 3-month kit is the best deal, and you will get a bunch of cool stuff with it. Check out what you get first. All right, that's my tip to you. And of course, to the folks at Field of Greens, fieldofgreens.com. The links are all in the description. You can use the promo code TPP to get 15% off. Get started with Field of Greens. I'm a 41-year-old guy. I'm loving it. You will not be sorry. All right.
And don't forget to follow us on over to Charlie Kirk Show. He will be live at 1:33 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the exact time.
That's right. All the best, folks. We will see you tomorrow, noon
Deuces.
Eastern Standard Time. Deuces.
How much you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be. I know you got a man, but he don't understand.